Hey folks, what's up? This is Adam here, aka Cena Guy. We're back here on the Movie Vault again. Still in that mood to review movies here on the Movie Vault. You know, people appreciated the fact that I came back after a while and did a review on Wolf, which came out in the year of 1994, starring Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer. People appreciated that. Again, I don't know how long I'll be back reviewing movies for, but hopefully for a while, because I do miss reviewing movies. But with the things going on in my life at the time, in terms of work, mental health and all that kind of stuff, sometimes it affects my performance or whatever, or interest. But I'm fine at the moment, so I'm here to review another movie which I saw back in 1999 when it first came out at the cinema. And it's this movie right here, The Haunting. Different from all the others, as you could say, because I still have this on DVD. We'll get it on Blu-ray in the far future. And this was directed by Jan de Bont. Now, Jan de Bont has directed other movies that I like. He directed Speed, which starred Keanu Reeves. Love that movie. I hear that the movie Twister, which is also another film that he made, was also a good classic, which came out in the 90s. But I think I was very young when I saw that movie, and I only saw certain clips of it, and it didn't really appeal to me. But it is a movie that I would love to, give another try in the far future, because I hear that the movie is a classic. You know, Speed 2, Cruise Control, which I heard that was a complete fucking failure. I think he did a sequel to a Tomb Raider movie, and then shortly after that he stopped directing. You know. And he also did this film. You know, a lot of people say films like Speed and Twister are one of the best films he ever directed. They say a movie like this was one of his poorest movies he ever directed. But I disagree. Like I said, it was 1999 when this movie came out. And I did go to the cinema to see it. And I liked the movie. And after watching it again, it kind of took me back to the time when I did see it for the first time. And I still enjoy the film. Again, it's not the greatest scary horror movie of all time, but it's also not one of the worst. I think it's got a good cast. Liam Neeson, Owen Wilson, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Lily Taylor. So you can't go wrong with the cast in this movie. I admit they've been in better movies, but I liked them in this movie, and I thought they all worked well with the chemistry of working together, pulling off these characters. I mean, basically what the film is about, it's about Lily Taylor plays this woman by the name of, which some people call Nell, but her name is Eleanor. You know, we learn that she's been looking after a sick mother for 11 years. And her sister, who's played by Virginia Madsen, again, another good actress. It's a shame she didn't have, a bigger role in this movie. She starred in the first Candyman movie, and I love Candyman, you know. Got the Candyman tattoo here on my arm, you know. So it's a shame that she didn't have a bigger role in this movie. I mean, you think with Virginia Madsen's caliber and her acting and all that, she was given a bigger role. But no, she was only given a minor role in this movie. She's playing Lily Taylor's on-screen sister in this movie. And she wants to evict Nell, you know, because the mother's died, she's made a will. They want to put the apartment out on the market, but Lily Taylor's like, no, this is my home, I want to stay here. But Virginia Madsen and her husband are trying to persuade Nell to agree to the sell-up if they give her the mother's car, which is 20 years old, and also going out to live with them and caring for their bratty little kid. Eleanor, help me, I gotta pee. You know, an annoying little kid. But Nell stands by her decision, saying she doesn't want anything to do with that, and she wants to stay in this house. And shortly after when they leave, she receives a telephone call. And she thinks it's from Liam Neeson's character, saying that they're doing a study on sleep, and if she'd like to be a subject in this house in the middle of nowhere called Hill House. And she agrees to it, but little do we know, this is not really Liam Neeson's character on the phone at this point. You know, Liam Neeson's playing this guy by the name of Dr. Marrow, and he's doing a study on fear. But he's letting all these people know in advertisements that he's really doing a study on sleep, basically. And when they meet at this Hill House, a lot of people say, well, they make the first complaint right off the bat, saying that the house is too pretty, saying the house is too nice to be used like in a horror movie. You know, they say the decorations look too pretty, the statues, the gargoyles, the stained glass windows, you know, the designs of the lanterns and all that kind of stuff. And I have to say, I disagree. I've said this from time and time again, right? You don't have to have an obvious scary setting to make something scary. Take clowns, for example. You know, clowns. I think clowns are much more scarier when they're more normal looking like. You know, I think Ronald McDonald is 10 times more scarier than Pennywise the Dancing Clown, you know, when he's in demon form. You know what I mean? That's just my honest opinion. And I think it's the same when they use prosthetic makeup in horror movies of all these people when they look deformed and everything. In my opinion, I think it's much more 10 times more scarier if you get real looking people with real deformities. I think that's much more better. I think that's much more scarier than using CGI, makeup, you know, and all that kind of thing. And I think normal looking clowns are scarier than obvious scary looking clowns. And I can say the same thing about this movie with the settings. You know, everything looks normal, but it's like, you know, there's like all these statues of these children, you know, these cherubs, you know, especially when Nell goes to a room for the first time and you see the carvings of those children's heads on the mantelpiece, you know. And I think that's 10 times more scarier than making an obvious more scary settings. I mean, they could have made it more scarier by replacing the children's heads with skulls, you know, and all these other kind of things. But I'm glad I didn't do that. You know, it's much more scarier with obvious stuff. Just my opinion. But that was the first complaint this movie got about the settings of this movie, saying it was too pretty, it was too much of a beautiful looking house to be used like in a scary setting. But I disagree with that. So one by one, they all arrive at this house. Liam Neeson's character, Dr. Marrow, is introduced first. You know, that's where we get to meet Owen Wilson, who plays a guy by the name of Luke. You know, I liked his character in this movie. He, like, sort of says he's like a toss and turner, can't sleep, he's got insomnia. And he, like, kind of takes an interest into Theo, who's played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, like, more of like a crush. Catherine Zeta-Jones, like I say, I like Catherine Zeta-Jones, like she was in The Mask of Zorro. And she kind of hints that she's a lesbian or bisexual, you know, during that conversation with her and Nell in that room. And you kind of get the impression that she has a crush on Lily Taylor's character as well. But they never really got into that. Throughout the movie, that's kind of like forgotten, you know. But like, the romance doesn't go anywhere. I mean, there's like certain hints, you know, where she's saying, I love the way you comb your hair like that. And she gives Lily Taylor this bedroom robe, like this red silky bedroom robe to wear. You know, so the way she's like in a company, you could tell that she's got like this crush on her. But again, nothing really came of it. I mean, for the first bit of the movie, Theo and Nell are exploring the house. You know, they say that the carvings look creepy and all that kind of thing. They go into that room, you know, like that room where it's like all moving and it's got that music playing. And I love that, the composer, by the way, just let me double check on his name. The composer of this movie, Jerry Goldsmith. I think he did a great job as a composer in this movie. I mean, with that music playing in that ballroom, you know, where they're dancing with all those mirrors, you know, the room's moving bit by bit. So I love Jerry Goldsmith. I think he did a fantastic role as the composer in this movie and all the music, you know. But like I say, I've got no complaints with the house. I think it was good for a setting in a movie like this. You know, not obvious, scary looking. I thought using children and, you know, all these animals like lions and eagles as statues and all that were a nice touch to make the film feel creepy. But there's a scene in this movie where one person in the house gets sent to hospital because the string of this instrument comes loose and hits her in the face and she causes like a bloody eye. Yeah, because this is after when Dr. Marrow tells a story about who lived in the house by this rich man by the name of Hugh Crane, you know, and about all he wanted was a house filled by the laughter of children. So he invited all the kids from the mills to live with him in the house, but little do we know he's a monster and he killed them all. He had a wife called Renee who committed suicide. You know, We don't learn until later on in the movie that he had a second wife called Carolyn, and she's in the same bloodline as Lily Taylor. You know, I thought the scenes were creepy. You know, where Nell wakes up in the middle of the night and there's some banging on the doors. You know, there's some creepy sounds coming from here and everywhere. Little do we know it's Hugh Crane's ghost. You know, going around all the corridors. You know, banging on the doors and causing all kinds of, you know, scary moments. The scene where the doorknob's turning and Nell quickly locks the door to stop him from entering into the room. You know, I thought that was some pretty freaky scenes. You know, same with like all the moving statues, you know, and the moving heads, and I thought it was a really nice touch. Creepy scenes. Again, I was more like spooked out by the movie when I first saw it. I mean, when I see the movie today, I mean, I know what to expect 'cause I've seen the movie plenty of times, but I still get a kick out of it. Again, I don't think it's a disastrous movie. I don't think it's one of those movies that is terrible like some movie reviewers point out. I can understand their views from their general opinion, but in my opinion, it's never really agreeable with my terms. I thought it was a fine movie. Can't go wrong with the cast, can't go wrong with the director. So, pretty satisfying. As the film rolls on, Lily Taylor becomes more involved into the house. She's like eager to find out about what happened to the children. She makes some discoveries. The ghosts of the children are trying to help a guide about the secret about what really happened when Hugh Crane killed all the children. She finds out later on down the line that Caroline, which was Hugh Crane's second wife, is her great-great-grandmother, and she's wearing the necklace, that the same one that her grandmother wore. You know, there's a scene in the movie where she feels like it's her responsibility to help the children, even though they're all dead as ghosts, help them move on. She becomes like very hysterical, very mentally ill, but she's like driven to stay in the house to protect the children and stop Hugh Crane for hunting the kids, you know, further. You know, I thought that was a spooky scene, seeing the ghost of Renee, his first wife, hanging in the greenhouse. You know, one by one, statues start coming alive, and the hunting scenes start to become more severe. You know, I mean, towards the end, it's all about Hugh Crane trying to kill Lily Taylor. One scene I did not get about this movie. There's a scene where Lily Taylor's lying in bed and Catherine Zeta-Jones' character is saying, "We've got to stay and protect Nell, no one can leave her alone." And Owen Wilson's character says, "I'll take the first watch." So he's supposed to be watching over Lily Taylor's character. He's supposed to be protecting her. So why isn't he in the same room as her? How come he's in the opposite room? And then when all the room is coming to pieces and Hugh Crane's starting to kill Lily Taylor, how come he never heard or noticed any of that these things were happening when he's got a job to protect them? And when he finally does realise the door slams shut and he can't get access to the room, and I'm thinking, why aren't you in the same room? How come you didn't notice all this stuff till late? So that kind of bothered me a little bit. I'm thinking, you know, you're supposed to be watching over Nell, you know, why didn't you do a better job than that? And how come you didn't notice all the shit was going on with all the noise and everything that was happening? And it's only until Nell screams until he finally notices that something was wrong, you know what I mean? But again, the ending, it's like Hugh Crane trying to kill everybody in the house. He's not going to let anybody go. They do attempt to try and smash windows to try and escape the house. You know, Owen Wilson's character becomes decapitated when he goes into the fireplace, and the Floo, you know, the statue of the lion's head, comes and decapitates Owen Wilson. Again, no blood or anything like that. Lily Taylor's character comes to her demise. She dies while trying to protect the children, and when she does, she becomes an angel, and the ghosts follow her to heaven. You know, and the ending, it's just the two survivors, Catherine Zeta-Jones and Liam Neeson, and of course they leave Hill House speechless when the gates are unlocked by the Dudleys. You know, so overall, it's a satisfying movie. Like I said, I liked it back in 1999 when I first saw it in the cinema. I've seen it plenty of times since then. I once owned it on VHS, but I eventually got the DVD of it. But I do like the movie up to the point where I would get it in Blu-ray in the far future. You know, it's nice to look back on some horror movies that we saw in the 90s when these were starting to come out, you know. So you could say, I suppose, it is like a childhood movie that I did see, you know, and we all love the movies that we see in our childhoods. You know, we all see them and we get them for that particular reason. You know, so The Haunting is just one of those movies that I did see back in the day and I really enjoyed. And when I rewatch it now, it's like going back in time, you know, back to the good old days. So, again, I've only got that problem with that one scene, and that was the Owen Wilson scene, you know, where he didn't really watch over Nell that good. And again, I've got no complaints about Hill House, the settings, or anything like that. Again, great cast, and love the director, love the composer. So the film does have its positive things. I mean, I think people bash it too much, saying it's too PG or the house wasn't the right setting for the movie and all that. I suppose I agree with their opinions to some extent, but again, this is not like the worst horror movie ever made. I'm saying it's not the most fantastic one ever made, but it's definitely not one of the worst. I think people bash it a little too much. I enjoyed the film, and the movie does have its fans also. It does have a fan base, so I do recommend the movie. You know, and if you're a fan of like Liam Neeson and those other cast roles, I mean, I do recommend checking this movie out, you know, if you're a fan of those particular actors. So, that's my review, everybody. Again, what do you think about the movie? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave them in the comments below. Thanks, everyone. Peace out.